So when is somebody a genuinely self-employed contractor offering out his or her services, or when are they really employees of a company? And on a very sort of high-profile level, we've seen some broadcasters over the course of the last couple of years who've really fallen foul of this. The most recent one being TV presenter Eamon Holmes, who worked for ITV, and he's lost a case against HM Revenue and Customs because they say really he was an employee of ITV and that he was using a vehicle, a company vehicle, as a way, of perhaps not paying as much tax as he would if it was fully on PAYE. But it's not just relatively highly paid broadcasters this affects. I mean, for example, one of the things that really first put me onto this was a letter, a sort of really quite upset letter I got from someone saying, 15 years ago, Nigel, I started my own niche company providing IT and project control services. I've worked over the years for 25 different companies. They are my clients. I voted Conservative in the election because I thought they were the party of business. He says, my current client now refuses to work with limited companies. They have put a blanket ban on them, and indeed other firms that I do work with. So this is a small guy running his own business, doing work for big companies, and he says the other big firms are also saying the same. So it's now impossible for me to get work via my company. And he goes on to make the point, that he doesn't get health provision, doesn't get pensions, doesn't get any protection of any kind at all. He's running his own business and he's incurring costs in running that business. And if the firms he worked for now say they're not going to operate for him on that basis, he's got a problem. And I think, from what I can pick up on this and other tax issues, there are some real concerns. Let's try and boil this down. Let's try and understand exactly what is going on. And I'm joined this morning by Martin Levin, High Street accountant, Institute of Taxation, Harrow. Martin, good morning. Welcome.
Good morning. Thank you very much.
So, at the moment, it is my responsibility, if I'm the person with a limited company and I'm providing, I could be an electrician, I could be providing IT services, and I designate that I'm providing that service, and you as the company pay me the amount plus VAT if I'm VAT registered. But all the rules are about to change, aren't they, in a couple of weeks?
Dramatically so. It's actually vice versa. The responsibility is now on the top of the pyramid. It doesn't matter how many people are in that pyramid. You might have an umbrella organisation employing lots of subcontractors. I'm sure we'll come on to umbrella companies a bit later on. But the whole idea was that you then turned round and said, if you wanted your money, you then went to probably the human resources of the big employer. The big employer, let's talk about being the main people at the top. They're the giants of the world. Banks, building societies, big builders and people like that. We'll put the BBC on one side because that's a separate issue. And they now have the responsibility of ascertaining who are we paying this money to? Are they really self-employed? Is it a limited company? Are we liable for national insurance? And here is where the bum is going to be bitten. Because from the 6th of April, national insurance will bite in and pay-as-you-earn tax will be deducted if the main employer decides that they're glorified employees. Now, no matter how many steps that you take, and you can take steps, you can actually try and ascertain your own tax status by a tool. Initial letters are CEST, which stands for Check Employment Status Tax. It's a bit flawed, and it's been around for some time. It's on the Revenue website. It was updated in about November. But there are flaws in it that can be challenged. So what you need to do, if you're the person that's got your own one-man band, personal service company, I'll try and avoid initial letters.
But if I am, a one-man company, or perhaps a two-man company providing IT services, and I go to, a major company and I go to them once, twice a year, and I update that computer system, whatever I do, and I submit a bill. It's a couple of grand each time or whatever it is. It's then, as it is now, my responsibility to sort that out with the taxman. But if that then becomes the responsibility of the company, as it will, from the 6th of April, they will just say, do you know what, we can't be bothered with this.
Correct.
We don't want years down the line to find out that actually we're in trouble. So they're just going to deduct National Insurance and PAYE, and that's going to leave a lot of self-employed people much worse off, isn't it?
It is indeed. And here's the irony: when these rules were first put out inside the Inland Revenue, about a third of their subcontractors quit.
Really?
Yep, because they found out they were going to be caught. So in simple money terms, it's a negotiation between you as the contractor providing the service and the final employer. What's the price for the job? A lot of people have estimated you need to put your prices up between 20 and 30%.
Gosh.
So that your take-home pay is going to be the same before the 5th of April 2020 as it is going to be afterwards. Now, if anybody gets it wrong in this chain, talk about a chain, let's think about a relay race where somebody starts it off, passes it on to somebody else. That's how the chain of work works. If you get it wrong and the taxman hasn't got his money, he can go back right to the very top and ask for that money. So the point that you made about the top man deducting tax and national insurance.
I can't be bothered with this.
Oh, yeah.
Why have the liability? Is there any chance... is there any chance the government could change their mind in the
very
budget
much so.
next
There was
week?
A protest last week, and the government's announcement at the back end of last week was, we're going to have a soft landing, whatever that is. No hard reaction in the next 12 months. Which is another way of kicking it into touch.
Yes.
If you ever notice these questions go backwards and forwards, you get one answer, noted.
But it would be fair to say, wouldn't it, Martin, that some people have actually misused this system because effectively, let's give the example of somebody, it could be a broadcaster, for argument's sake, somebody whose only source of income has come from one company to whom they provide work and services, and then they do it through a limited company, and they're able, tax-wise, to avoid quite a bit of national insurance or whatever. Isn't the truth of it, some people have been abusing this system?
There'll always be people abusing it. If you look at the sign in the parks that says, please keep off the grass, people will always walk on the grass.
Yes, they will. They will. I get that. Now, I get this on Twitter. I get one issue with being inside IR35 is travel costs and subsistence can no longer be claimed. I live in Rugby. It's 12,000 quid a year for parking and train to go down to London. That's a huge hit. And will demobilise a skilled niche workforce. So she makes the point, if you're commuting down from Rugby every day to London and you work for several companies, you're not an employee of anybody, you work for several companies and you earn money from them at the moment, you can offset your travel costs against it. It's a fair point, isn't it?
Absolutely fair point, and that's one of the classic ones. The whole idea of travel cost has been contested over many, many decades with the taxman. And there's a case called the Recorder of Portsmouth. He lived in London, but had a day job down at Portsmouth at the same time, had his other self-employment as a lawyer in London. He decided that he wanted to claim London to Portsmouth deduction. But because it was an employment that he accepted in Portsmouth, it was held that he couldn't deduct it. But that was a question of the point of payment was an employment. If the point of payment is self-employment, you can deduct it, which in your instance it was. And it's always better to have more than one person as your customer.
Yeah, and there must be a lot of you out there who, either you or someone in your family acts as a contractor and you will be desperate, I think, to get these rules changed. Let's take a caller. Let's take a real-life example. Let's speak to Bennett in Edinburgh. Good morning to you.
Oh, thanks very much for having me on the programme. Yeah, I'm not an expert in IR35 at all. I work as a contractor on and off, doing that sort of thing, but it's been made perfectly clear for me as people are now recruiting, as the agencies understand what's going on and the end clients understand what's going on, that actually it's just totally economic. So from my own point of view, the industry that I work in, 90% of that work would be in the southeast, but I maintain a household elsewhere. The work, if you take on that work, doesn't allow you to work for other people. It's intense. You work for a 6-week period of intensity and long shifts and that sort of thing. And the whole economics of flights, travel, hotels, food and everything like that just means that it's not even worth me considering it anymore. And that's a huge change. And in fact, speaking personally, and I know other people are in this situation that live outside the southeast, it really cuts off that line of work for me unless I was to relocate.
Because tax-wise, you'd just be so much worse off.
Yeah, I'd be so much worse off. You know, the expenses involved in working in that way.
Well, the one solution we talked about a few minutes ago with Martin Levin is you could put your prices up 20-30%.
Well, I mean, that may well be what's going to happen. I can't see that that's provided that people are prepared to pay that. But the point I wanted to make is we've got this whole idea of the Northern Powerhouse and we're bringing in HS2 and everything like that. Well, there's a good reason why people live elsewhere in the country. It's much cheaper. It's an awful lot of hassle when you don't go to your home every night because you're away for 6 weeks. But the difficulty is what this is doing is actually focusing, the people that really do the work in the country. It precludes them from working in the southeast, and there's a trouble with that in the sense that if you're already based in the southeast, it's not going to make a huge amount of difference for you. If you're elsewhere and you're working, you're having to go to the southeast.
And you give that example from Edinburgh, and we had a text not long ago from a lady in Rugby. So, no, that's a very interesting point you make. Thank you, Bennett, for making it. Nigel, on PAYE, you'll pay between 30 and 40% tax to HMRC. When I was an IT consultant, I paid VAT, corporation tax, self-assessment and dividend tax. HMRC will potentially now be getting less taxes. How is this good for the country? I'm not sure quite how I assess that. But what you may well get is a lot of young people, and this is what worries me. A lot of young people now have set up their own little limited companies or acting as sole traders because a lot of young people are in the new technology game. They've got their own particular skill sets. They go out as contractors, and I actually see, if these tax changes do go through, I see this as a disincentive for young people to go out and set up on their own. I don't like that. Coming back to this in a moment, but for now, it's the Sunday edition of the Nigel Farage Show, and it's 11:15. So the tax and national insurance responsibility shifts from the individual contractor providing the service to the company that is taking the service. And that means a lot of big firms are saying to one-man bands all over the country, hey, if you come into business for us, we're just going to take away. We're going to take away PAYE. We're going to take away national insurance. And that leaves a lot of people out there who are running their own companies with genuinely legitimate expenses. If they can't offset them, they are going to be worse off by 20 to 30% every year. Now, there is another argument here, of course, and I'm going to put this to High Street accountant Martin Levin. You know, some people feel differently. Now, Tim here says, the company I work for employs freelancers who were disguised as full-time employees, paying only 11% tax, unlike the full-time employees. And he says freelancers are not paying their fair share of tax, and therefore I'm all in favour of IR35.
What do you decide is a fair rate of tax, though? Because these guys might have very expensive expenses.
But if somebody effectively goes to the same place of work every day. Right.
Now we're there.
So there are some noughties here, aren't there?
Yes, very much so, yeah. This is what that tool that I talked about earlier, CEST.
Yeah.
And one of the conditions there was exactly that. Are you coming to the same place of work every day?
Yes.
This is where the BBC got caught. And we're going back 4 decades here from where it first came about. And this was a dinner party where the chairman of the Revenue, as it then was, and the chairman of the BBC were around the table, and they said, well, most of our guys come in, use our equipment, and they're self-employed. And that was in the mid-70s. So that was where the baby was first born.
And if the taxman does find against you, how far can they go back?
20 years.
20 years?
Yeah.
I have to say, I didn't realise that.
No. I can understand why you didn't realise it. Usually it's 6 years.
That's what I thought, 6, 7 years.
Yeah. When self-assessment came out in 1997, it was a question of done and dusted, that year is closed off. And you're thinking, that is wonderful. I mean, a number of times I protected my clients at that time by making sure the revenue wouldn't go back. Now they've come back and they said, careless. They've had these definitions. Are you negligent, careless, fraud or willful default?
I'm really shocked by that. I have to say, in my years in business before politics, I used to keep the stuff for 7 years and then burn it all.
Didn't we all? It was lovely, yeah.
I look forward to burning it all, and thinking the taxman was off my back. Let's go to Lee, our next caller from Prescott up on Merseyside. Lee, good morning to you.
Good morning, Nigel.
So how could these rules affect you, Lee?
So Monday to Friday, I'm employed by the NHS, so that's PAYE. However, over the weekend, I work for the local out-of-hours GP service as a nurse practitioner. So I invoice them directly. I don't go through an agency. I'm not a limited company. I'm just a one-man band, really. So I'm not sure whether the work I do over the weekend will come under IR35 or not.
Yes, it would have done, but it would have come out in about 2 years ago when IR35 was extended. And the test for that was if you were paid out of the public purse. It was principally aimed at the BBC. But then suddenly you realise that if a government department such as the NHS or anybody else would have been paying you, schools was another one, then they had to establish, or you had to prove to them, using this CEST tool, CEST, that you were a self-employed person. Now, of course, it's going to be slightly different. To me, it's still much the same. Go on the Revenue's website, answer their questions on the CEST, which is flawed because it doesn't cover things like mutuality of obligation. That's a question of they offering you an employer or contractor offers you work and you can accept it or decline it. Now, you should have done this before, printed it off and sent it to the payroll department or the human resources department so they had something on their books to cover them in case of errors in the past. Now, from the 6th of April, they will probably be chasing you for it, in which case you can still do it. There's a warning that if there's a word that I've seen, game the CEST tool, it's null and void, all bets are off. But it's in your interest to turn around and print off all the answers that they've got to prove that you're still self-employed, because your out-of-hours GP service would ask you to do different things. Now, as soon as you become self-employed, effectively your home is your base for operations. So as soon as you leave home, you're tax deductible, as opposed to being in employment, because you're self-employed for this weekend work.
So
okay.
Lee is a sole trader, effectively.
He is a sole trader, yes, which is nothing unusual. He's got a full-time job, pay as you earn with the National Health, okay, and then he's got this self-employment as doing GP relief services, in which case he can deduct expenses. It doesn't work through a limited company, so it makes it much cleaner for him to work out his taxes. But the problem is going to be proving that any payments that he gets from the GP relief service are kosher and outside of IR35. And from what you tell me, you can be outside of 35 if you do this.
OK, Lee, are you reassured by that?
Yes, that's great. Thank you.
Good, thank you very much indeed. There must be a lot of people in his position.
Very much so. Yes.
They've got a particular skill set.
Yep.
They do their 40 hours a week, but they want to earn money at weekends or whatever it is. Must be a lot of people in that position, and he's not doing anything wrong.
Yep.
But I wonder how many people there are who just aren't going to know what to do in a couple of weeks' time. I mean, how many people do you think this could affect potentially?
Loads. Journalists often ask me this question: what's the figure? And the answer is, I don't have a crystal ball.
No.
I mean, the question that I always answer is, there's those that don't know, and those that don't know they don't know.
Well,
you've heard that before, haven't you?
No. Well, that's right. And actually, if you get a change as fundamental as this, you could well find lots of people who are potentially in trouble and don't even know they're in trouble until it's a bit late.
And they come back and they say, ignorance of the law is no excuse.
I know, but this is scaring people. This is scaring people, and because it's the reason that people use accountants, I guess, because to try and do this on your own would be pretty much impossible. Kerry is calling from Winsford. Good morning, Kerry.
Hello, good morning. Thank you for taking my call, Nigel.
Not one bit. So give us your situation, Kerry.
Okay, so I've just at the beginning of starting up a business, an auditing business, and it has the potential quite easily to grow into quite a big business that would employ lots of people. But at the moment, I am working as a contractor. So I'm going to put a stop to it because, and I think this is the thing, is this going to stop a lot of entrepreneurs who would start up as a single individual in a business, and then accidentally it would just grow because it has the ability to do that. Is that going to stifle this now?
Well, Kerry, my worry is that if a lot of these big firms say, the hell with it, we don't want the responsibility, we don't want the tax man coming back years later saying, actually, you should have assessed this contractor differently. They were only doing stuff for you, they weren't doing stuff elsewhere. And so if lots and lots of big firms say, the hell with it, we're just not prepared to entertain it, I think it will stifle entrepreneurial flair in our country. What do you say, Martin?
Oh, yes, that's the whole idea of it. Over the years, I've acted for an awful lot of people in the construction industry, and their attitude has been, I'm great on the tools, but lousy in the office. Mm-hmm. And there you got it summed up in a while. Because the unfortunate thing about it is the government decides that all businesses can be the size of the huge public limited companies. An ex-Speaker of the House of Commons, Sir Bernard Weatherall, in the 70s said 95% of businesses in this country employ 5 or fewer employees, yet the government treats them all the size of ICI, who were the giants at the time. I've asked my Institute of Tax, Harrow, and head office, has that figure changed? And through the Office of Responsibilities, a chap there, it hasn't really moved. People who employ 5 or fewer employees are still the huge majority in the country.
Absolutely.
These are the guys where the seed corn is, entrepreneur spirit, and they're the ones that are creating the wealth. You don't tax people or kill off the wealth creators of this country. You encourage them.
And Kerry, is it time the government listened to this?
It most certainly is. And just as one other comment, and I won't name names, but there are a few big companies I know who employ a lot of contractors, some in construction and some in telecoms. And I know for a fact, because I have people who I know work in those areas, they've just put a blanket ban. A blanket no.
That was the letter I read out at the top, the blanket ban that is coming in from big companies. Kerry, you're absolutely right. This needs to be rethought. Just give us, before we go to the news, why the government wants to do this. What's in it for the government in turning these rules around the other way, Martin Levin?
Cash flow advantage, because if they get more people under pay-as-you-earn, then they will get monthly pay-as-you-earn receipts and employers' national insurance coming in much quicker than if you did self-employment and filed once a year and balanced up at the 31st of January.
So cash flow's their main...
Yeah, and their estimate is 400 million quid has been lost this way. But I would challenge that, because who knows what is lost? Like the black economy, figures are invented, nobody challenges them.
No.
I'm looking at you, Nigel.
No. I know. In a moment, we will talk about Storm George. That after Storm Dennis and Storm Kira and still flooding in parts of our country. We'll talk to John Ketley in a moment. We are talking about government tax changes. We are talking about small companies, sole traders, acting as contractors, who may well find, with a reversal of the rules coming from the 6th of April, that big firms no longer want to use their services on that basis. And what does that mean for an economy that's supposed to encourage entrepreneurs? What does it mean for a Conservative government? And the Conservatives are always telling us they're the party of business. The problem is, folks, they're the party of the big corporate businesses, and no longer are they the party of the small man and woman, and that's my concern here. A typical SMS that I'm getting on this How will new companies be formed and grow? They won't be able to raise finance without their first client, and they won't get this because of the IR35 risk to the company, irrespective of CEST. This is pure nonsense and should be subject to a cross-party investigation. Has the new Chancellor made any comments on this himself, Martin?
Not that I've seen. I haven't seen anything, but I did see last week it was a question of a government announcement. So whether it was attributed to the individual, I think that's the way you couch it. Friday afternoon, release your bad news when nobody's looking. So
yeah, well, that government's very good at that. Let's. We've got lots of people ringing in with their questions, their thoughts on this, so let's keep them going. Let's go to Cornelius in Northwood. Cornelius, good morning.
Good morning, Nigel. How are you?
I am all right, Cornelius, but I'm concerned. I'm concerned that if we disincentivise people to set up their own businesses, we're doing the economy great harm.
Well, first of all, I'm not originally from Northwood. I'm staying at my daughter's place at the moment, but I'm from Swansea. I've spoken to you once or twice in the past.
Right, very good.
But,
well, welcome back.
No problem, mate. My question is, from myself, I've had a limited company for many years as an engineer in the oil industry. I was based in the North Sea for 12 years. I do projects all over Europe, etc. And I work through agencies, whether it's in Aberdeen, London, Manchester, for oil companies as an independent engineer through my limited company. Now, are you saying that my limited company won't be able to function anymore?
Well, we're not saying, no one's saying you won't be able to function. The question is, will you be able to function efficiently? And you know, if the people giving out the work decide they can't be bothered with the potential tax and national insurance liability, you may well find yourself just doing the work for less money, Cornelius.
Well, I listened to the programme this morning and I can see the concerns of a lot of people, but the ones that I've listened to so far is like as if they work for a permanent employer through self-employed basis. Now, I've never worked for an employer, like for years, for instance. I've worked on contracts 6 months, 9 months, 18 months, etc., etc. And I have gone through a couple of agencies in the UK who have been stung for tax because of limited companies that could have gone bust, etc. And they put you through like an apartment company, and then you work through them, and they cover your tax, etc. So I'm just wondering whether is somebody who's starting up a limited company as a self-employed engineer who's not going to be solely working for a employer for long stretches of time, whether they can still function normal.
Well, let's get Martin's view on what. And so Cornelius Martin has been acting entirely legitimately in every way, but he does raise this concern. What does it mean going on?
Oh, yucky da, Cornelius, and happy St David's Day to you.
Oh, it is St David's Day. It is St David's Day. Oh, how dim of me.
Yeah, look, we only just arrived back from the pond, haven't you? Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. You see, I'm not only a high street accountant, I've got my feet on the ground some of the time, yeah. Cornelius, I've got some good news for you, because small firms should be okay under this new post-6th of April rules. Small firms means that the employer needs to establish whether its future contracts are going to come within or outside our IR35. Question: what is the definition of a small firm's? Companies House website has this thing where the turnover is something like, I think it was £11 million or 10.2 million. A one-man band, boy, you've got to be a real specialist to clock up that sort of dosh, haven't you? Cornelius, are you in that particular category?
Sorry. Could he say that income again?
Turnover of about 10 million quid in a year.
10 million? I wish I was, mate.
Well, there you go. Hold on. You're in the oil industry. Now, do you remember Red Adair?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Yeah, I wonder if he was alive today. I don't know how he died, but it certainly probably wasn't putting out oil fires at all, whether he'd be charging that premium. But if you're a real specialist contractor, you can name your own price, so you might be there. So
yeah. But I see what he's saying there about naming your own price, but it doesn't really work that way, because a lot of oil companies, for instance, I've done a project for 2.5 years based in Belgium, and a lot of these agents, all they do is try and hunt for the cheapest guy in order for the agent to make more money. So it doesn't really work out that way, to be truthful. But I've always worked all my life through my limited company, independently for all companies. So sorry for interrupting you. Am I still going to be functional or not?
Yes.
In a word, yes.
Yeah, you'll be functioning, but Cornelius, there's no guarantee that the people that you provide your services to will say, "Oh, that's fine. We know he's legitimate." Martin,
can I add something else to that as well? If you find you're toned down and they're classifying you as an employee, you can appeal. And the best thing that you can do is what I say about this employment status tool, CEST, is you've got it as evidence and keep going for that. Don't take the first no for an answer, because this is new legislation. It hasn't fully been tested. It's flawed.
Yeah. OK, Cornelius, you can appeal if anyone gives you a tough time. But then again, if I'm out there bidding for business, the last thing I want to do, or the last thing I want to get a reputation for, Martin, is contesting against companies that are handing out the business.
You don't bite the hand that feeds you, do you?
That's the problem, isn't it? Yeah, that really is the problem. Carol is on the line. She's a new caller from Germany. Good morning, Carol.
Hi, Nigel. I'm actually in England. I did call before from Germany. But,
OK, fine. Well, Carol, we've got you anyway. Tell us about your status.
Well, I'm actually, I've been self-employed for 20 years. But I'm actually now on a state pension. And so I've always had several clients, but at the moment I have one. And I know that is always a questionable thing. But I don't have to pay national insurance anymore, and neither does the employer, as I understand it. So am I affected by this?
It's a rotten line, but did you hear what she said?
Not
Martin?
all of it. I've made notes. You've got several clients and you're left with one.
She's got one client and she's on a state pension.
Yeah, I've got that.
And she's is she gonna? She said she's not paying national insurance.
No, she's exempt because she's on a state pension.
Yes.
The answer is you paid enough into the state. Good health to you. You paid enough into the system. We won't ask you to pay any more.
But if she's just got one client,
well, that's the danger. If you just got one client,
should she really be an employee if she's getting work?
No, it depends. If you just got the one client, how do you work, Carol?
Carol, you're back, I believe.
Great, yeah.
That's better. Mm-hmm. That's better. So we were just talking it through. You've just got one client, though, yeah?
Yeah, my question isn't actually about that. I realise that can put a question over self-employment. But my main question is, as a pensioner, I don't pay national insurance anymore. And so the state isn't, neither the client nor I'm gaining in that sense from self-employment. So am I affected by this? Am I affected by the new rules?
If you are classified as an employee, the employee doesn't pay national insurance, but the employer will still pay national insurance for the pensioner. And that's what they're trying to get, as much national insurance, employer's side as well. Talking about 13.8%, something about that, call it 14%. One of the big problems that if you are reclassified inside IR35, you do not get employees protection, sick pay, holiday pay, or anything else. So that's one thing to worry about. My question to you, though, is your one client that you've got, are they in the public sector?
No, they're not.
So it's a private arrangement.
When I first started working for them, as I say, I've been doing freelance work for a long time now, and when I first started working for them, they really wanted to have me on the books. But it suits me better, because at the time when I started working for them, I did have several clients, so I'd still have to do self-assessment. It would have complicated my life, so I really wanted to be self-employed. I'm cutting down now. As I say, I'm actually on a state pension. The work that I do, this has got nothing to do with the law. I'm actually helping them to get clients in German-speaking Europe. So I'm actually doing something to bring tax into the economy as a wider point on this subject. So it just seems, I'm doing my bit for the economy. I've never been eligible or haven't been eligible for the last 20 years for sick pay.
I want to know the legal position, but also make the point of how sort of destructive this move is.
No, you've made the point very well, Carol. Thank you. Now, umbrella companies, we said earlier, would probably come up, and they have. I'm self-employed, operating inside IR35, earning a day rate and utilising an umbrella company. One of my concerns is that there are lots of rogue umbrella companies out there who try to maximise the contractor's take-home pay whilst reducing their tax deductions. But how compliant is this? The contractor is left in the dark as to whether or not tax deductions are at the right level, and resulting in a potentially large outstanding tax liability at the end of the financial tax year. Contractors need to have their eyes wide open if they are subject to IR35 tax laws, and at the moment we are still left in the dark, says Emma. Give us some thoughts on umbrella companies, Martin.
I discovered umbrella company only in the last few days. I was watching one of my webinars, and it was published by, the initial letters are FCSA, and they pointed out they have a list on their website of approved umbrella companies, because there are some shysters around. And they're the sort of people that, Emma, you've outlined. You don't know at the end of the year whether they paid the tax over or not, or you're saddled with it. If you're inside IR35, if, as I said at the top of the hour, if the government hasn't got the money off you, off the umbrella company, bang, they're going to go pass it up the line just like a relay race until they actually pin it on somebody.
And that's what the change in the law is designed to do. And that then means we see some big firms putting in blanket bans. It's not pretty. Now, George has a question that affects a lot of people in this country. George from Hendon, good morning.
Hello there, Nigel. Just a quick question. I'm a private hire driver. I work for one of the major private hire companies in London.
Yes.
At the moment, I subcontract myself out to this company, and they take a percentage and pay me. Will they now have to, under IR35, will they now have to bring all their PAYE and National Insurance in-house and pay that on my behalf?
More than likely, there's a lot of unknowns in this morning's questions as far as that goes. This is about the first one that I've come across that I can't say 100% you'll be in the clear. I would say small firms, the way the system's worked out so far is the big firms have actually put in place in the last few months new IR35 regulations. They're geared up for it, but there again, they've got the manpower and the muscle to do it. The smaller firms, and I've acted for many of people in your position, George, over the years, they've been quite happy where they've been having the daily rate taken off them from the companies operating it, and they are truly self-employed. They may still, with a bit of luck, because you come under the small firms area that I can see, be okay. But there again, this is untested waters, and it may well be that somebody would say, I've had a change of mind.
And it's very likely, of course, isn't it, that some of these car companies will take one route, some will take another route.
Yep.
George, you've been given no indication, no?
No, I'm taxed as a sole trader.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And nobody knows. I mean, even your accountant may have an opinion on Monday and change it on Tuesday, because, boy, in the profession, are we bombarded almost daily. I've got a Facebook page that I post all the stuff that I get in from the press. And at the end of this show, Nigel, if it's all right with the guys here, not only the questions, but the notes that I've made about this, I'll publish M. Levin & Co. Facebook page, something like this, and at least you can have a look. And the crunch that I've come out with today is this check employment status for tax, CEST tool. Everybody should be looking at it, printing off a copy and showing it to whoever pays them.
George, your phone call convinces me of one thing, and that is, if this comes in on the 6th of April with the sheer level of uncertainty that exists out there, it's going to be absolute chaos. Your phone call, George, has convinced me the government must at least suspend this for a period of time. George, thank you for your call. Nigel, great show. IR35 driving me crazy. I'm a contractor with a limited company, HGV Driving. So I receive my shifts in 1 week at a time. Also, I have my shifts often cancelled with no pay. That's a very fair point. Clearly, no sick pay, no holiday, now being forced to work through an umbrella company. Please help, says Adrian. And this is another just a plea for help, not understanding quite what the umbrella company means. This can't be allowed to go. We can't have this change on the 6th of April, can we?
Well, we haven't got much of a choice, but what we can do is to keep protesting. There was a protest last week outside Whitehall with it for about 400 or 500 people, and they've got the government to back off a little bit and say, we're not going to take any high-handed stuff for the next 12 months, but we've heard that all before.
And how long has this been sort of coming down the tracks at us?
For this, 2017.
2017.
March 2017, so we're coming up almost 3 years ago. But I think over the last 3 years, we've had other things on in our news that have occupied us.
One or two political stories out there. And would it... I tell you what, I've got a piece of advice for all of you out there that are self-employed contractors, sole traders. You know, now that actually we're not arguing about Brexit every minute of every single day, we now have members of Parliament who better start doing their jobs again as members of Parliament. And I really, and by the way, Martin Levin, thank you for coming in this morning. Thank you for taking the calls.
My pleasure.
From people. And there's so much uncertainty out there. There's so many worried people out there. We're already hearing of blanket bans being brought in by some of the big firms towards contractors. That means some people are going to be 20 to 30% worse off. Contact your MP. Lobby your MP. Ask your MP whether he or she knows the answers to any of these questions. And if they don't, ask them to pressure the government to suspend this. It cannot come in, being the absolute dog's dinner it is on the 6th of April.